Hi guys, welcome to lesson 6 of our resource management topic. Today we're going to be carrying on with our looking at the water and water consumption around the world. And we're focusing today on the increasing water demand that is facing our planet. So as always, the activity is to watch this video through, and at the end there are 3 review questions for you to answer and upload to show my homework. As you are going along, you are also more than welcome to make notes, as it might prove useful for any revision when we come back, whenever that is. Any questions, you can also join the live Zoom support. But other than that, we'll crack on with the rest of this lesson. So a bit of a recap for you. In the last lesson, we were looking at this idea of a water surplus and a water deficit. So a water surplus exists when a water supply is greater than a demand, whereas a water deficit occurs when the water demand is greater than the supply. And we were talking about how it's important that that deficit doesn't happen, but it does, and it's because of physical and economic reasons. And this can lead to something called water insecurity, and when water availability is not enough to ensure the population of an area enjoys good health, livelihood, and earnings, which can lead to obviously huge health problems for them in terms of both disease and also their general quality of life, which will impact their level of development in that country. Today, then, we're going to look at, well, this is a bit of a weird trend because across the world there is an increasing water consumption. However, in the UK, if you remember that lesson we did about 2 weeks ago, the UK's water consumption is actually slightly reducing, so we don't fit the general pattern here. But on a global level, water consumption is increasing quite dramatically. And there are 2 main reasons for that. The first reason is population growth, and the second reason is economic development. So the first reason is all to do with the fact that our population is growing at a huge rate, and our economic development, again, that will link in with some countries being LICs, NEEs, and HICs. Now, a bit of an exam hint here. I always use population as a get out of jail free card in geography. So there will be a time on this topic where I ask you to explain why, why there might be shortages of a resource, or explain why there is more consumption, explain why there is increased demand for resources. And a good answer to always give is increasing populations. Now, over the last 2 centuries, the last 200 years, the world's population has grown at a rapid exponential rate. Since the year 1900, it has grown by over 5 billion people. Now, that is incredibly hard to comprehend, but in the last 120 years, our human population has grown by 5 billion people. And all of those people have more and more demands on the world's fresh water. Now, think already how many places on that map from last lesson had a difficult access of physical problems to accessing water resources. To then add even more people into that mix, it makes it very, very difficult. So, for example, if we have 23 of us in our normal year 11 class, and we have 23 bottles of water, if our class size increases to 40, we have the same amount of water. That's going to lead to water insecurity, and we'd have a water deficit as well. So this graph here is showing something called water withdrawal. Now, the word withdrawal is a bit of a weird one in this sense. What it essentially means is it's water that is withdrawn from the natural freshwater resources. So think of it like you withdraw water from a tap, technically. So when you see that word, don't be confused by it. That's just saying how much water is withdrawn from our water table, our water resources. So if you look at the map, the little purple line here is showing the world's population, starting down here in 1 billion in the year 1900, right through up to nearly 7 billion in 2010. And these compound bar charts are also showing how the amount of water is changing as well. It's clearly to see, if we were to draw a line of best fit, the amount of water consumption is clearly increased quite dramatically. Now remember, it's called a compound bar chart because of that total amount, each of the shaded boxes shows what proportion is done by which area or sector. So for example, in this little blue one down here, it's mainly agricultural with a very little bit of industrial. Now, the question I have for you there, if you want to pause this video here, is which activity contributes to the most water use? And secondly, why has domestic use increased since 1900? So there are two questions. Pause this video and unpause once you've had a little think about those two. Okay, so the activity that contributes the most to water use or withdrawal is agriculture, which is farming. And why is domestic use increased since 1900? Well, think about it. Think about what we have now: showers, baths, taps across the house. We have appliances that use water, like coffee machines, kettles, and all those advanced technology have meant that our domestic use has increased quite dramatically. That's the reason why. The second reason is something called economic development. So there is also a pattern between the level of development of a place and how much water is consumed. Many countries are developing at a rapid rate across the world, and this increases water consumption. So, another little graph on the board here, and this is showing the water use in litres per person per day. The countries in the green are high income countries. The ones in the orange, I know this is MICs, there are NEEs, or newly emerging economies. And the ones in blue are our low income countries. Now, I hope you can see that as we go via development, the amount of water in litres per day is increasing quite dramatically. So the US is the highest. On average, the average person per day uses 575 litres of water, which is a huge amount. The UK, in contrast, we're in the middle here, is a bit of an anomaly. We're only 149. However, you can clearly see in this box here that all the countries that are at the bottom of this graph in terms of water use per person per day, they're all LICs. Okay, they're all countries that are not particularly developed. And then, in theory, the next ones should be the NEEs and then finally the HICs. There is another anomaly here in Mexico. So obviously not everyone fits the pattern, but generally LICs least. Then we've got our NEEs in the middle, and finally our HICs are using the most amount of water. So my question to that would be, well, why does development lead to more water use? So why do people in the USA or Germany or Japan use more water than people do in Zimbabwe? And there are three reasons. The first one is it's all to do with living standards. So people in countries that have become richer have more money to spend on items like dishwashers, washing machines, flushing toilets and showers. And that all means that they have more money or they have more appliances that use water, that consume water. A dishwasher, huge amounts of water. Flushing toilets, something we all consider a luxury, not always the case around the world. People also tend to eat more meat, and meat is a huge contributor to water use. We'll look at that in a minute. Okay, so the richer you are, the more appliances you have, the more likely you are to eat meat. And in terms of that meat figure here, before we go on to industrial growth, for the average kilogram of beef, it requires 15,415 litres of water to produce that kilogram of beef. Now, that's for the water in the plants they eat, water in the buffaloes. It's a huge level of water. And that second reason is industrial growth. So as countries develop, their manufacturing industries consume more water. So not only does it cost lots of water to make beef, to make one pair of Levi 501s is 3,781 litres of water. And to produce one small cup of coffee is 132 litres of water. Now, this is a bit of abstract thinking here because obviously in that cup of coffee, there's only about maybe 200 milliliters of water in that small cup of coffee. However, the reason it takes so much to produce it is all the water that is needed to plant and grow the coffee bean, to transport it around the world, to cool the machinery made to produce the coffee machine in the first place. So, lots of different things that are really contributing to that. And the last factor is farming. So this has changed with increasing economic development. Modern commercial agriculture uses huge amounts of water in irrigation systems. So basically, for us to produce crops, we need a huge amount of water to do so. In fact, farming accounts for 70% of the water used in the world, which is a huge amount. But again, linking back to the start of this lesson, it all links back to this idea that our population is increasing quite dramatically. By 2050, agricultural water use will need to increase 19%. So not already it got to 70% of the world's water, it will have to further increase by another 19% in order to feed the additional 2 billion people we're going to have. So you can see where these sort of problems are coming out now, where there's only so much water and there's only so much resources to actually sustain our planet and our population. And again, if we're looking at it here, the trends is not as severe this time, but it's still very much an upwards trend. The population is increasing. The amount of irrigation is the fancy word for spraying the crops with water, is increasing. And we would expect, if we were to extrapolate this graph here, we would expect this to continue further into the future and really carry on to increase the amount of water we consume. So hopefully you've got some good ideas there on that water consumption. And I want to be really clear here that when we're talking about this, I just want to focus on these two factors: population growth and economic development. Therefore, for these review questions, instead of a normal 3, there's only 2 this time. So for these ones, what I want to do is I want to explain how population growth increases water consumption. And I want to explain the 3 ways in which economic development increases water consumption. Now, you are welcome, as always, to use this video to scroll back through it, to listen to me talking again, or to even just pause the slide to look at the information. So, for example, you can go back and pause the video on any of these slides that will help you get the information for that. But also, let's try best. I want to upload those, show my homework once you've done them. And as always, there will be live Zoom support if you do want to chat to me about anything or have any problems.